Okay. In this video I'm going to take a look at the unit circle, and the unit circle is usually covered when you get into a pretty intense trigonometry course, or probably pre-calculus is the first time you're usually going to see it. And I'm going to go through this circle, fill it in terms of degrees and radians, but before we begin, there's a few things that I just want to mention. The unit circle is a circle with a radius of 1. And if you don't know what radians is simply another unit of measure for an angle that you're not usually introduced to until you get to trigonometry. But just for right now, just take to heart that 360 degrees is equal to 2 pi radians, and that 180 degrees is equivalent to pi radians. And we'll come back to these 30, 60, 90s and 45, 45, 90s later. But first, let's go through them and fill this in terms of degrees. Well, I need somewhere for my circle to start, that's for sure. So if I don't have any angle yet or any circle yet, I'm going to start at 0 degrees no matter what, until I make one full revolution around my circle, which then will give me 360 degrees. Now, a semicircle, or half of that circle, would give me 180 degrees, putting me right here. And once you've got these two set up, finding the rest should be pretty easy. If you take your 180 degrees and cut that in half, you should be at 90 degrees. This is a 90-degree angle. Now we can go by multiples of 90. If we start at 0, we add 90. 90 plus another 90 would give me 180. 180 plus 90 would give me 270. So here's 270. Now, if we take our 90 degrees and we cut that exactly in half, that would give us 45 degrees, putting us right there. If we go by multiples of 45 around this circle, remember from 0 to 45 is just adding 45. 45 plus 45 is 90. We already have that. If we take 90 and add 45, we're going to be at 135 degrees. And if I add another 45, that should get me to 180. Let's just keep going. 180 plus 45, that should give you 225. 225 degrees plus 45 would give me 270. 270 plus a 45 would put me at 315 degrees. Adding one more 45 would get me to 360 degrees. Notice how we took, if you just focus on our half a circle right now, we took our half a circle and we divided it into how many equal parts? 4 equal parts so far, right? Here's our first equal part from 0 to 45. Here's another equal part from 45 to 90, from 90 to 135. And then finally 135 to 180 is another equal piece. Those are 4 equal pieces, giving us multiples of 45. But however, if we had taken our half circle 180 and divided it by 6, each angle would be 30 degrees, putting us right there, 30 degrees. Now we can go by multiples of 30 degrees. If you keep adding 30, you get 30 plus 30 is 60, 60 plus 30 is 90, 90 plus 30 is 120, 120 plus 30 is going to give me my 150 degree angle. Adding 30 again will get me to 180. 180 plus 30 will give me 210. And 210 plus 30 would give me 240 degrees. Adding 30 to that would give me 270. Adding 30 to that, 270 would give me 300 degrees. 300 plus 30 would give me 330. And finally, I'm back to 360 degrees. So we've gone through this entire circle in terms of degrees. Let's go through it in terms of radians now. If you remembered at the beginning of the video, I said that 360 degrees is equivalent to 2 pi radians. Okay, let me use a different color. It's equivalent to 2 pi radians. I'm going to abbreviate radians in terms of RAD. Again, even if we're starting our circle for the first time, 0 degrees is equivalent to 0 radians because we have not started our circle. until we make one full revolution around that circle and hit 360 degrees. We have not created a circle. Now, I also said that 180 degrees is equivalent to pi radians. And we're just going to go through this and fill in every radian value. Now, if I had chosen, remember, when I first started in degrees, I took my 180 and divided that in 2 to get my 90-degree angle. I'm going to take my pi radians and cut that in 2. If pi radians is equivalent to 180 degrees, pi divided by 2 should give me 90 degrees. So if I started 0, that's 1 pi over 2. 2 pi over 2 would be right here, but that's simply pi. 3 pi over 2 would put me at 270 degrees. And finally, adding another pi over 2, adding another 90 degrees would get me to 2 pi. 4 pi over 2, which would reduce into 2 pi. Now, if I took my pi radians and I cut it into 4 equal parts, remember, this was 45, 90, 135, 180. We can take our 90 degree and cut it in half to get 45. So what does that mean? If I take pi over 2 and divide by 2, what do I get? I get pi over 4. Now we can go through this in multiples of pi over 4s. Our first one is pi over 4. 2 pi over 4 is the same thing as saying pi over 2. 3 pi over 4 would put me right here. Adding another pi over 4 would put me at 4 pi over 4, but that's simply pi radians. Taking 4 pi over 4 and adding another pi over 4 would give me 5 pi over 4. Adding another pi over 4 would get me to 6 pi over 4, but if you notice, we already have 6 pi over 4 in simplified version, which is 3 pi over 2. Adding 6 pi over 4 plus another pi over 4 would get me to 7 pi over 4. And adding another pi over 4 to that would get me to 8 pi over 4, and that would be 2 pi radians. I'm sorry I didn't fill in the radians. There should all be radians after this. Again, let's go by multiples of 30 now. But remember, when we started our 30-degree angle, we took 180 and we divided by 6 because we want 6 equivalent parts. So 0 to 30, 30 to 60, 60 to 90, they're all parts by 30. So we can take our pi radians and we can cut that by 6. So our first angle is pi over 6 radians. And now we can go through this by multiples of pi over 6. What is pi over 6 plus another pi over 6? That would give me 2 pi over 6, but if you reduce that, your 60-degree angle is pi over 3. Once you have this first quadrant, it's pretty simple to get the rest. Remember, we started pi over 6, 2 pi over 6. 3 pi over 6 would be right there, but that's pi over 2 already. 4 pi over 6 would put me right there, but that's simply 2 pi over 3. 4 pi over 6 reduced. 4 pi over 6, adding another pi over 6 would put me at 5 pi over 6. Adding another pi over 6 would get me to 6 pi over 6, but I already have that because I have pi radians. Taking 6 pi over 6 and adding another pi over 6 would get me to 7 pi over 6. Taking 7 pi over 6 and adding another pi over 6 would get me to 8 pi over 6, or simply 4 pi over 3. Again, we had 8 pi over 6, adding another pi over 6 would get me to 9 pi over 6, but if you reduce 9 pi over 6, that's going to be 3 halves. The next angle would be 10 pi over 6. 10 pi over 6 reduced would be 5 pi over 3. And finally, 10 pi over 6 plus pi over 6 would give me 11 pi over 6. And we're done in terms of degrees and in radians. If you want an easy way to remember this, remember all your 6's will usually be the closest to the x-axis. Here's pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6, 11 pi over 6 would be right there, and any multiple of 3 is always going to be kind of in the top right, top left, bottom left, bottom right. It's going to be all by multiples of 3. Okay. I'm going to stop here and I'm going to pick up filling these coordinates in the next video.